Thank you. It is now my privilege to introduce our Family Forum invited speaker, Bonnie Wan. Bonnie is creator and author of The Life Brief, a simple yet profound action-driving practice that helps people navigate life's big decisions with clarity, creativity, and courage. The Life Brief applies the art and science of brand strategy to how we live our lives. As a 30-year career brand strategist turned life and leadership strategist, Bonnie not only helps some of the world's most iconic companies innovate from a place of purpose, but also guides everyday people on living with greater intention and imagination. She's been named Ad Age Chief Strategy Officer of the Year, one of 100 women to know in America, and an Ames Institute Curious 100. So when the Spouses Committee met as a group this year, we thought that it only made sense to have everyone here at the Western benefit from hearing Bonnie talk. The Life Brief has evolved from an agency talk to keynotes, workshops, and now a best-selling book. The Life Brief, a playbook for no regrets living, is an essential tool for aligning your daily actions with ambition and value. Today, Bonnie is a global speaker, teacher, life and leadership strategist who has worked with Accenture, Adidas, Airbnb, Apple, Canes Lions, Change.org, Chief, Google, MBA, Aura, South by Southwest, and World 50 Group, as well as Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop and John Goodall's Activating Hope Summit. Please join me in welcoming Bonnie.
Hi, is this working? Yes. What a room of extraordinary people. Thank you, Michael. That was such an awe-inspiring way to kick this off. You must be thinking, why are we closing with someone from advertising? We've just heard some remarkable stories of human endeavors. But while I might be standing up here, this final talk is about you. I will tell some stories. More importantly, I'm going to ask some questions. And those notepads and pens, I'm going to ask you to pick them up and write whatever comes to mind as you listen. Dr. Baker, I will not call you Craig, thank you for curating an extraordinary arc. While I wasn't present for your talk, I heard much about it and a lot of parallels to what we've been hearing today. What I do as a brand strategist is my job is to ask questions. Not all questions are created equal, though. Some are just a little bit more penetrating than others. I have a question that I came here to ask you today that I ask at the beginning of my book, but I want to start with some questions that I picked up from Michael's talk. What happens when we allow others to define our value? What happens when we dare to swim downstream to the beat of our own unique and distinct truths? And what happens when extraordinary people, that is all of you in this room, decide to tune our attention to the things, the relationships that society deems ordinary? What happens when we decide to invest in those things? And the question I really came to ask is this one. What do you want? It's such a devilishly simple question. You get asked it every day, all the time. You ask it every day, all the time. But that's not the question I'm asking you right here, right now. I am asking this through the lens of what Dr. Baker and Michael has set up, as well as these beautiful eulogies. I'm not asking, what are you in the mood for? What do you feel like? I'm not asking, what do you think you want? I'm not asking, what does your family want for you? What does your boss or partner expect of you? Or even what your children need. And I know there are some children in this room. And if for those children, I'm also not asking, what do your parents need from you or expect of you? I am asking, in your heart of hearts, what do you really, really want that maybe you haven't allowed yourself to admit yet? And if we were to frame it in the spirit of today's theme, what do you really want for your own legacy? If any answers came up for you, I'm going to invite you to write them down on your pad. I'm not going to ask you to share, but I want you to write it down. You've heard a lot, you've absorbed a lot since yesterday. This is the space and moment for you to reflect on. What have you heard? How does that make you feel? How does that shift what you want from your own legacy? I don't see a lot of people writing. So I'm just going to wait. I'm very patient. Maybe your mind went blank. That's okay. You're not alone. Or maybe you thought, oh my gosh, I know where this is going. I don't need to do this right now. Okay. Or maybe a warning went off that, don't answer that question. Don't be too honest, because you'll only set yourself up for disappointment. Not just yourself, but maybe some other people around you. That's okay too. You're not alone. This is the question I've been asking for 15 years, and I've met many people who actively avoid this question out of that fear of disappointment. But let me give you the flip side. When we give ourselves permission to answer this question, we unlock unexpected twists, unimaginable gifts that we could have never anticipated nor planned for. And while our honest answers might become a disruptive force for those we love, those around us, those we care about, when they witness the people we become, when we dare to swim downstream, fueled by our unique and distinct truths, they too will light up. How do I know this? Because I've seen it happen again and again and again. In 2010, this question saved my life because it saved my marriage. My life at this time looked picture perfect online and on paper. I was the rising star at my agency, leading our biggest accounts. I had won already the first of many awards. I was married to a kind and loving man, and we were living at the edges of wine country in Northern California, and I'd just given birth to our third child, Ruby. Ziggy, Isla, and Ruby. And I had just returned back to work. On the outside, it looked great. It looked enviable. On the inside, I was a hot mess. I was exhausted. Anyone with 3 young children, I've seen that at the breakfast, in the breakfast room. I was exhausted. I was the main breadwinner for our family of 5. I was also the 24-hour restaurant, the head of housekeeping, and the play date organizer. I was frustrated. I was tired. I was angry, and I thought my husband was to blame. Of course, it wasn't me. It was my husband. And one day, it all came to a head in the parking lot of Whole Foods. Because that's where moms go to get alone time. I still distinctly remember sitting in the car, listening to the rain pound on the steel of the car. I couldn't get out. I was paralyzed. I didn't want to get out. So I called my best friend about half a world away, and I voiced the questions that I dared not admit. Am I with the right person? Did I marry the right partner? Can we hold up this big life that we've started to create? And most terrifying, what if the answers are no? We can. We can't. What do we do then? Well, here's the thing. No answers came in the parking lot of Whole Foods. But once spoken, those questions came front and center again a few weeks later as I went on a business trip to my hometown near here in LA. I thought the warmth of my mom's Chinese cooking might be a salve to my frustrations. It wasn't, but late that night, I woke up and I was hit with these questions again. But I did something different than I had done the many weeks and months before. I took my strategist reflex for questions, and I asked myself the same question I just asked you. What do I really want? Not what do my kids need? Not what did I promise in my wedding vows? Not what do my parents who are sleeping next door want for me? And I did something different. For the first time in my whole life, I gave myself permission to be nakedly honest. And I captured it in writing. Because as a strategist, I always start with a question. I look at the research, the emotional data, and I put it to paper. Because that's how I collect the ingredients for clarity. Something happened when I laid out the chaos that was swirling in my head onto paper. A new story emerged than the one that I had been looping again and again in my mind. And that story was, my marriage is broken. That's the one I was telling myself. But the one that came out on the page was not that my marriage was broken. It was my relationship with time that was broken. Now, when I unpack time, as we've heard again and again, and even in the eulogies, it was really about attention. My relationship with my attention and my presence. Because what came out on the page was not that I wanted less time with my husband. I wanted more time. But I wanted it to be more meaningful time. And what also came out on the page, what I could see, was all the ways that I was spilling and spending my time, then investing it, instead of investing it in the things that were most important to me. All the ways I was gunning for the next promotion, trying to land the next big pitch. All the ways I was trying to be the perfect mother, daughter, friend, community member. And at the end of each day, I was too exhausted to give anything meaningful to the relationships I cared about most. Here's what's funny. When our brains see a new problem than the one that we were trying to solve, we immediately go and try to solve that new problem. And that problem became, okay, how do I reimagine my time? And what came out that night in that reimagining became the birth of what I now call a life brief. What is a life brief? So in my business, in the creative business, what I do for companies as a strategist is distill everything they do into one sentence on one page. And we call it a creative brief. We distill their purpose. Why do they exist? What is sacred to them, non-negotiable? And we intersect that with what is their greatest ambition. And it is that in that distillation and a declaration of who they are, that gives them the clarity of focus to go after bolder ambitions and to be distinct in a sea of sameness. Because companies fight really, really hard for your attention, my attention, and it's very hard to break through in this world of business chaos. So the creative brief keeps everyone sharp. And since 2010, I now get to do this for people, not just brands. I get to help leaders, teams, students get crystal clear on what they want in their lives. I call it making meaning out of messiness. Any parts of your life where you feel confusion or complexity, that's where there's an opportunity to get clear with a life brief. The first life brief, that one in 2010, I called Take Our Time. It had two meanings. Taking our time meant take control of my time and my attention, redirect it and invest it in what matters most. Stop spilling it and spending it. And once I wrote it, it also meant slow the fuck down. What was I chasing? Why was I in such a rush to get somewhere else? So much of what I loved and longed for was right here in front of me. And everything below Take Our Time became a manifesto to keep me clear about what meant the most to me. All of the dimensions that deserved, that I wanted to invest my energy and attention in. And what happened when I wrote this, I shared it with my husband, and he immediately texted back, YES, all caps, triple exclamations. It was the first moment of alignment in over a year and a half that we had. And the first ray of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could redirect and reimagine our lives, the way we were spending our time and the way we were raising our family. And most importantly, there was a feeling that came up with that alignment and with that energy that I now call a fuck yes feeling. Okay, I know there are some children in the room. I hope that's not offensive, but I can't use any other phrase to describe it. It lit up the creative fires in our belly, because that's what clarity does. And to be aligned with your partner, there's no better rush or high. And what it activated was a sense of creativity. It allowed us to suddenly step back and play with possibilities. What if I stepped back and worked a 4-hour day or a 4-day week? What if we moved to a different city that had a lower cost of living? What if one of us could stay back with the kids and raise them? What if? We played with all sorts of ideas. 4 months after doing this, we moved. We relocated our family. And this brief brought us to a city that we loved, that lowered our cost of living. We moved into a neighborhood where every single thing we needed as a family was 1 block away. The school, the grocery store, the pizzeria, the coffee shop, even the cupcakery. Now, all you parents out there know what that means. No more shoving crying kids into car seats every morning. No more competing, complaining about who was going to do drop-off, who was going to do pickup. My commute went from 45 minutes in traffic to up the stairs because I also switched to remote work with my company. And my husband was able to step back and become our lead parent. Now, that isn't the choice that many people would make, but it was the choice that allowed us to fulfill that brief. For me to lean into work knowing that he was there at home. It allowed me to flourish in my career while knowing that my family was also thriving. It was so simple, yet for so long, it felt unavailable. But the clarity took us to this new place. And that's my family. If you can count, which I know you all can, there's another one in there. In this new chapter, we had our 4th Mabel. And what the first life brief did is it took us from the darkest chapter of our family life and threw open the gates to our golden chapter. And since then, I've watched this same practice do the same thing to hundreds of other people when they got clear, when they allowed themselves to collect their emotional data, get nakedly honest. They realized there was another story underneath the stories they've been holding that offered a new path to a new place. And I've watched it happen again and again. That first brief not only changed my life, but it became a workshop, it became a best-selling book, and now I have the gift of getting so many stories from people all over the world about how the practice of clarity has also changed their lives. And since 2010, I've written a brief for every part of my life. It has saved my marriage not once, but twice. It has centered my parenting, especially at a time during the pandemic when my firstborn, my son, really struggled mentally and emotionally. It skyrocketed my career. I thought my career after having 4 kids, okay, that was pretty good. Only to discover again and again that it took off in new places and spaces and new heights. I have a health brief and I have a wealth brief. And just this last year, I have creative briefs that have helped me make the leap from career to vocation and to become a full-time caregiver to my mom, who has early stage dementia. And that brief is called Dancing with Dementia, because in order to meet her in her place now, I have to be flexible and dance every day as it shifts. Here's what I've learned after 15 years of doing this practice. You can't have it all, but you can have all that matters. The question is, are you clear about what matters to you? And it's going to be different for every one of you in this room. How do you get clear? How do you become the strategist of your own life? How do you live out the lessons that Michael just took us through? How do you become the fish that dares to swim downstream to the beat of its own truth? You first have to get messy. And that's what these notepads are for. It's an invitation. I beckon you to take it. You have to meet your life with curiosity. Allow these penetrating questions to sink in and stir. Give yourself permission to answer with naked honesty. And then look for the stories that come out onto the page, because those become your ingredients and your clay for clarity. This is not a challenge, this is an invitation to meet yourself, to be in relationship with yourself. And it could be in the tiniest ways, or it can be in huge ways. So here's what I'm going to ask. If you're shy about writing right now, I'm going to ask that sometime today on this beautiful property, that you carve out 10 minutes of time to find your quiet. And to let the question, what do you really want, to drop in and stir. Set a timer, and I want you to write for those 10 minutes without pause, without plan, and without editing, without withholding. I want you to allow whatever is inside to come out onto the page. And that's it. Pick the most irresistible spot. Have your favorite beverage. Sink in and do this. And then tomorrow, I want you to do it again. The day after that, I want you to do it again. And again. And I want you to see what unfolds for 14 days. And you don't have to just ask that one question, what do you really want? There are other questions. And I invite you to follow and chase your own questions that come up. But here are some of my favorite ones. What lights you up? Really lights you up? How do you want to show up differently? What's one way you want to shift? How do you want to serve a part of your life that you want to lean into, that you want to shift or change? What's holding you back? What are you avoiding or resisting? And here's the one I love the most. What's worth wanting? As a creative person, I have learned the power of story. We just experienced it with Michael's many stories, not just of his life, but all the people he's learned from. Stories are powerful things, but we all have stories that we tell ourselves. And when we can see those stories and see how they activate us or how they hold us back, and we can name those stories, then we get to rewrite those stories. And that is a powerful thing. Because when we rewrite our stories, we change our stories, we change our life. And I've seen this happen to many different people at the C-suite, students in college, creators, a CEO who told me she had the epiphany after 14 days of writing that she was born the number 2 child in her family. And my gosh, she's been showing up as a number 2 in every part of her life. And she was ready to own and step into number 1. A young woman who hid behind the mask of alcohol because she thought she wasn't interesting enough. She needed something else to help her, that people wouldn't like her unless she had a drink, or 5. And it was only when she saw that and decided to try what it's like to take off the mask that she realized the people around her wanted to lean in deeper, connect longer. And a young man who was chasing a vision of success that he thought would please his parents, only to discover that in his heart he really just wanted to be a creator. And he was ready to embrace and define what success was on his own terms. What I'm inviting you into today is to be in relationship with yourself. Because once we see our truth, it's hard to unsee it. Once awakened, it's impossible to go back to sleep. Once our creative fires are lit, they're tough to extinguish. They take on a life of their own. That's why I call this creative, courageous, no regrets living. What is that thing that is calling to you? Are you ready to let it out and step into it? What does it mean to live without regret? I think Michael illustrated a lot of those things. What does it mean to deny our truths? I was just at Yale University last week, and I saw some powerful data that in the short term of our lives, we regret the things that we do, the mistakes we might think we've made. But it's in the long term of our lives that we regret the things we didn't do, the things we ignored, batted away, suppressed. And that's what no regrets living is all about. We've had the honor and pleasure of hearing eulogies, 3 of them, beautiful ones, beautiful lives lived. The only sadness about eulogies for me is that those people weren't in the room to hear them. So this art of writing down what you really want is in essence writing and seeing your own eulogies right there in front of you. Why is this important right now? We're in a moment of peak ambiguity, complexity, chaos. Everything that we were raised on has evaporated. The things that we were taught as how to do business, how to be successful, how to show up. A lot of those playbooks have evaporated. We're facing technologies that are isolating and separating us. We're facing a mental health crisis. I know too many people who have invested decades on doing jobs that AI now delivers in seconds. I have met many people who are rich in professional success, yet poor in relational connection. And many, many people with huge potential who are hiding or playing it safe or playing it small because somewhere along the way they were told they're too much, or more likely, not enough. What I know is that if you dare to start this practice, to allow yourself that naked honesty and to collect it on the page, that you become the author of your own story. We can either create life or we can sleepwalk through it. We can author our story or we can follow someone else's script. We can pine for the past, despair in the now, or imagine and invent our futures. And yes, we can risk the disappointment of not getting what we really want. Or we can regret not ever having gone for it at all. That choice is ours, that choice is yours, and it is always available to you. It begins with a question. What do you really, really want? I'm going to invite you one more time to write it down. And my second invitation is for you to share something that came up for you with someone near and dear to you. Because that is how we also connect deeper in a meaningful way with each other. And again, that's how we start to swim downstream, fueled by our unique and distinct truths. Thank you very much.
You like to have questions?